All right, guys. So for the next section in the personal safety module, we'll talk about the equipment and the ready pack. We'll start with the pack itself. There's a ton of different options out there in terms of how you can pack the gear that you need to take into the field with you. I've seen people over the years go from anything from a very big, almost orienteering or expedition type pack of just a very large pack with a lot of contents in it, all the way down to whatever they can stuff in their pockets, and then they're off and running. The pack is one of these things where there's a lot of opinions, and there's more opinions even so about what needs to be included in your pack. But the pack itself, think about your role on the team and think about the purpose that you serve. If you're in operations, if you're in the field and your task is to move quickly through the environment, maybe you're a canine handler, a tracker, or a member of a hasty team, you want something that can that you can move quickly in. So carry just the bare essentials, what you need, and nothing more. That's what you're looking for there. But if you're someone who maybe on a grid search team that could be out 4 6 hours, maybe even longer, all the way out to 24 or even longer, 72. Stretching it out that far. If you have a multi-day need for a multi-day pack, you need to consider that as well. So think about first before you go out and invest in a pack. Think about what your task is on the team, what you're going to need that pack for, and then you can start really shopping around. The big thing to consider is comfort. Okay, the big thing to consider is your comfort because you're going to be stuffing stuff inside of your pack. Your pack itself may have a frame or something in it that adds some structure, but it adds some additional weight. So think about whenever you get the pack stuffed, how well does it carry the load? Does it carry the load where you want it to be? Is there good distribution between your shoulders and your hips to alleviate some pressure off of your upper body? For me, myself, I'm a bigger guy. I'm 6'3" and top heavy to begin with. I prefer something that sits a little bit lower on my back, a lumbar pack even. I do carry a lumbar pack in the urban, suburban areas. But something that, it contours to your body well, it's snug, it's gonna give you the range of motion that you need. It's gonna carry the essentials of what you need to pack into the field. Okay. That's number one is comfort. Big wide straps, lots of padding. It's preferably something even adjustable on the height. Look at those things whenever you're looking at packs. The second thing to consider is it allows easy access to the contents, and there's a lots of different systems out there. I've seen people put on vests, and that way they've got all the material they need, all their equipment right here handy within pockets on their vest, and it's easier for them to access. I have personally used a pack that was very modular in nature, where you can easily remove some components that you may not need for a mission. You can clip stuff on and add it. The Molly design gives you a lot of flexibility in what you can attach to it. But something where you can easily access your essentials. If you want to stow something away for longer use, you've got room to do that if that's something you desire to carry. And also, it gives you a little bit of extra room in case you need to stuff, a jacket or something along the way, something that you could stuff inside of it. Okay, so but the big thing there is it allows you easy access to the things that you regularly need on a search. For me, the stuff that I regularly need and I want to have close so that way I have easy access to. I try to stuff the pockets of my cargo pants the best I can. I don't want to weigh those down, obviously, but I'd start stuffing with those. My lanyard that has my ID on it also has my clip for a pen. It also has a little compass and a whistle. And those are things that are just easy access for me, ready to go. And then if it's something like a flashlight, I keep that towards the top of my pack where I can just open it up and grab what my kind of go-tos are there handy on top. And then the stuff I may not need on every search, but it's something I don't necessarily want to leave home without. I may have that buried a little bit deeper in there, but I actually leave quite a bit of space in my pack empty for extra clothing, some rain gear, just some stuff that I may want to stuff in there before I head out, that I think I may need for that particular mission. And then lastly, the pack needs to be able to protect the contents. It needs to be able to protect the contents. You're going to be exposed to whatever you're exposed to, your pack is going to be as well. So you're going to have wind, rain, snow. So you need something that's durable. If you're crawling through a lot of briars, a lot of brush, something that's not going to rip and tear that easy, that's not going to get snagged on anything as you're going through, if that's an area that you typically operate in. So something that's durable enough to protect those contents. You can make some in the field adjustments to re-secure some stuff if your bag rips or something happens. But that's not an ideal situation because you lose a lot of confidence. You lose confidence in your gear, and it makes it hard to focus on something else. So you want a pack that's good, it's strong, and protects those contents. Now, with the equipment, over the next couple slides, we'll talk specifically about the equipment. And consider this potential contents for your Ready Pack. These are things that you may want to consider purchasing and adding to your pack as you're building it out. But the big things to consider there are getting the most out of your pack's weight, because everything you add to the pack adds a little bit of weight that you're carrying. So consider what you're doing to your pack and getting the most out of that, but also consider the equipment quality. It's one of those things where do your research, understand what other people carry and how they carry it. Don't buy the cheapest just because it's cheap. Expensive does not always mean that it's better. So do your research before you rush out and buy a bunch of really expensive equipment. See what other people on your team are wearing. Take a look at what best practices are out there. There's plenty of forums on social media that you can join where you can ask those kind of questions, and you'll get a very good response as to how you should fill your pack. The number one consideration I would have for you in terms of your pack and equipment is you have to prioritize water over all other pack contents. Okay, outside of your clothing that you wear, water is your number 2 priority. You need to figure out how you're going to carry your water. And there's a dozen different ways you can do that too. How you're going to carry it to make sure that you have enough with you whenever you're out there in the field. Canine handlers, for example, you're carrying water for 2, so that way you're also carrying water for your canine as well. And that whenever you think about the challenge of having to move through the environment rather quickly, all of a sudden that really becomes an issue or an obstacle if you don't have enough water, or you don't really think about how you're going to pack enough of it in there. So prioritize water. You're going to consume quite a bit of it. It's going to take up room in your pack, and it's going to be the thing that weighs your pack down the most. But it is by far the most essential thing outside of the clothing that you're wearing that you can take into the field. In terms of tools, you want to consider tools that serve multiple purposes. You want stuff that it may have a primary something, it may have a primary function, but with a little bit of ingenuity, or in combination with another tool, it may serve a totally different purpose that you can add some added functionality with you out there in the field. You're not always going to have it where every tool in your toolbox can serve dual functionality. But if you try to prioritize it the best you can, it'll do you a lot in terms of saving space in your pack and reducing the load. Okay. Whenever we talk about equipment, you're looking to carry enough that's going to get you through that 4 to 6 hour search assignment. If you're in an area where your normal operating time frame is beyond that, if you're used and should always be ready for a 24-hour search, then you can still kind of carry that same message that you need to really consider what your average mission duration is and focus on that, and be able to expand if you need to, but focus on what is considered a normal search assignment time frame for you in your area, and how you prioritize what you carry. The point being, if it's a non-essential, really consider the value that it brings whenever you do carry it, if it's non-essential. So there's no need to overcarry on something that's a non-essential for how you conduct your missions. In terms of the stuff that you have that may run on batteries, your flashlights, your GPS units. The if you can, if you have an opportunity to align those battery types, so that way you can avoid carrying multiple sets of spares. You can feed off of each other. You can pull batteries from one unit to another. If something runs out, that way you've got some redundancy, built-in redundancy in your gear, and you don't have to worry about carrying a bunch of different spares, just because your battery types aren't aligned. There's a lot of prepackaged kits out there also. I would very much urge a lot of caution whenever it comes to looking at those prepackaged kits. They're usually packaged together in a way where it makes it look like there's a tremendous amount of value saved in purchasing those kits. I honestly have not come across a prepackaged kit that really got me excited, with the contents and the value on it. I'm not saying that there's none out there, but usually they sell themselves by the number of pieces that are included in the kit, and usually they'll have a very high count of something that's really not worth a whole lot, and it takes up the bulk of the quantity of pieces that they offer. So really take a hard look at those prepackaged kits that are out there. I personally would recommend consult with somebody first before you go out and buy one. But that way you're not going out there and you're wasting a lot of money on something that's not going to bring you a lot of value. And lastly here, make sure you test your equipment before you go on a search. The field is not the appropriate place to try out a new piece of equipment. You should really test that out beforehand, get familiar with it, understand the benefits it brings to you, understand the limitations, understand kind of the gotchas about bringing that piece of equipment with you, before you really heavily rely on it out there in the field. So if you're not trained, and if you don't play around with it beforehand, it's probably not worth bringing out in the field and trying it out for the first time. So test that equipment before you get out there. And that brings us to the pack itself. And again, this is a fairly all-encompassing list, but what I'm going to try to do is break it down into different categories of things to consider. And really, this is even you can even consider the bullet points in somewhat of a prioritized order for you, in order for you to operate safely, operate with comfort, and for you to have the gear that you need whenever you go into the field. You can go online, and there are plenty of pack lists out there, suggested packing lists out there, that you can refer to, and they can go pretty deep. For those of you that have been hanging around the NASAR StarTech 2 program long enough, you probably remember the time whenever the consolidated pack guide that they would put out there would be a requirement, for you to pass your StarTech 2. You needed to have every item on the list. They've backed away from that, somewhat, over the past couple years. It's still you need to be able to achieve the field tasks with the equipment that you do bring. You're responsible for the equipment for that, but they backed off on some of those specifics. But really consider, in your normal search operating area, on the types of searches that you are typically involved with, consider these items. And the number one being water and replenishment. I cannot stress enough the need to carry enough water with you into the field for you to accomplish your goal, your task. It's not always going to work out, especially if you're given a longer assignment. You may be able to pack quite a bit of water, to get you to a certain point, and then you have to supplement, through your own sourcing of water, your own sourcing and making the water safely. You may have to do that at some point, but if you're only doing a 4 to 6 hour assignment, you can easily carry enough water for that. So for me, I carry at least 2 quarts of water, on every mission, with the ability to add more water bottles to my pack, if I expect I'm going to be out longer than that. And I also have the ability to safely render water consumable while I'm out there in the field. But water is going to be the thing that weighs you down the most. It's going to take up the most space in your pack. So really be cognizant of how much you bring, how much you're going to need. This is an area where it's okay to go over, because it's the most needed thing for you to be out there and operate safely. So make sure you have plenty of water or the ability to generate water. In terms of food, to support the energy requirements for search assignments, I would say that most field responders need an increase of 1.5 to 2.5 times normal, the caloric intake needed, but that's also depending on the task, the weather, and the terrain. So whatever you consume normally on a daily basis, if you're out there doing a lot of that physical work, you can expect to need 1.5 to 2.5 times more, to maintain that the caloric output. Not that you need to take that many calories into the field, but you do need to take some calories into the field in order to replenish stuff that you have burned off. So you want to carry foods that are high in calories and protein. Those will be the things that make you feel full. They make you feel satisfied. They're going to give you some energy, so that way you can move. You can, if you can, avoid stuff that needs to be heated in the field prior to consumption. Now, I know there's plenty of really good options out there with MREs and some of those freeze dried meals that they don't take up a tremendous amount of space, and they don't really weigh a whole lot. You can put those in your pack if you expect to be out there longer than your normal 4 to 6 hour search assignment. But if you're only looking out there to be out there 4 to 6 hours, half a day, that's probably something that you can avoid. You can package up your food somehow else. I do a lot of the protein bars, a lot of Kind bars, stuff that doesn't melt in my pack, because it's I could be out in the heat, or it may get hot inside the pack. So something that whenever I open it up, it's just not creating a big mess whenever I'm trying to eat it. Nothing canned, because it's gonna weigh me down. It's gonna take up a lot of space. So avoid stuff that's canned if possible. If you're looking for if your normal search assignments are longer, then you do want to build in a meal kit, and have a system to heat up your food while you're out there, because it does provide a lot of comfort to have a warm meal out there in the field. But if you're on that 4 to 6 hour, that shorter search assignment duration, you should try to avoid that if you can, unless it's just something that you need to kind of keep you going. But you do want to carry enough rations on you to kind of stretch to 24 hours if needed, and you can get away with a day or two without eating. If need be, you'll be quite grumpy and you'll be fairly weak coming out of it. But but definitely do carry some calories in the field with you. I usually carry about 1,200 calories. That's usually what I take with me. I don't always eat it all while I'm out there, because sometimes I may come back in, get something to eat before I go on my next assignment. But if you're out there in that range, consider what would life be like if I was stuck out here for 24 hours without any subsistence. And then plan based off of that. And then finally, with water and replenishment, consider the water that's going to be required for you to process that food. I mentioned I eat the protein bars, the energy bars. Those are usually pretty dry in nature, and so for me to properly process that and digest that, I need to account for that in water. I need to be able to bring enough water to process that food. So again, that goes back to the first thing I mentioned about water. Really, really prioritize the water that you carry. It plays into so many things, and it's probably the most important thing that you can bring out to the field with you, other than the clothes that you're wearing. The next bullet point here with personal protective equipment, this goes beyond just the helmet or the safety goggles, which are things that you should consider wearing depending on the tasks you're doing in your environment. It goes a little bit beyond that. It's also probably the most important item would be your personal first aid kit and any medications that you need to bring with you out there in the field. That should always be towards the top of the list of things to make sure you have, is even if it's just a simple boo-boo bag, or a little a couple Band-Aids, or something that fits in with the scope of your training that you can apply to yourself. A personal first aid kit and your medications. I know that I've run into plenty of searchers over the years that needed to have, insulin, or they needed to have some pills, or They may have severe allergic reactions and stuff, so they have to carry an EpiPen. That's stuff that you obviously need to prioritize and have a way to carry that safely with you in the field. But on top of that, in personal protective equipment, that's also your insect repellent, your sunscreen, sunglasses, head protection, stuff like that fits in that bucket as well. High vis vest, your identification. If you have if you have a team badge or some kind of an identification, I would lump that into that personal protective equipment grouping there. As far as comforts and sanitation are concerned, the big thing in this section I would want to highlight is any kind of spare clothing that you may have. And we talked about clothing in the last module, but it's always a good idea to have at least a change of socks, if not more. I typically always carry a couple pairs of socks, and in the winter months I've got an extra fleece, pullover, and some rain gear that I take out there with me. That's enough that I feel like it can get me through a day if I needed to be out there. Even in wet conditions, I still feel pretty good about that. But also hand sanitizer, toilet paper, wet wipes, stuff of that nature. You need to consider as well. And then the trawl, which we'll talk about later on down the road, but something to dig yourself a cat hole with if you need to take care of some business while you're out there. It's bound to happen, so that's something you can plan for accordingly. The trawl that I carry in my pack, it's extremely lightweight. It's a cheap plastic trawl, and it's one of those things where if I use it once and it breaks while I'm using it, and if that's the only time I need to use it, that's fine. I'll just spend the $2 and get another one. It's not a big deal. I don't want to carry a big heavy trawl out there because it adds weight to my pack. Okay, but that's something to consider as well. You can get like the travel size hand sanitizer, travel size wet wipes packs. It may have like 20 or so in there, which is fine to get you through a search assignment. And toilet paper, obviously, just from a comfort perspective, I mean, there's plenty of options for you out there in the nature if that's something you choose to do, but it's not quite the same as that double ply. So that's something you can easily pack away in a plastic bag to keep it dry and tuck it away in your pack. Okay. With tactical equipment, this is the bullet that most people think about whenever they think about search and rescue equipment. And whenever I think of tactical equipment, this is the equipment that I need to do my job. This is the stuff that I need to bring in order to accomplish the task that I've been set out to do. So this will first include having some kind of a notebook and pencil or an ink pen, something to write with and something to write on. I recommend on this, you're going to be in environments where it's wet. They may have a light rain or even a heavy rain. I would recommend you look at some of the notepads that have the waterproof paper or the water resistant paper. You're writing the rains, stuff like that. That way you can still write down what you need to write down, and your paper doesn't become all waterlogged and clumped together and unusable at that point. So look at the writing rains. They come in various sizes. I usually shove it's probably like a 4x5 notebook. I usually shove that in my cargo pants here. I put that in there, and then I've got a pen that writes on the writing rain paper wrapped around on my lanyard. A pencil will do just fine on that type of paper because of the coating on it. If you use a normal gel pen, it'll rub off. So you either have to use a special pen for it, or you just pack a pencil. But anything that you have to write with and to write on, that's something you need to prioritize. A knife is another good piece of equipment to take out there. It shouldn't be viewed as a weapon, but it's really there to be a tool. It's really there for whatever you feel like you need to use a knife for, to pry stuff open, to make little cuts, to help build something else. A knife is viewed as a tool there, and it doesn't need to be a big knife like we have the one in the picture here. The one I usually carry is just a little black folding knife, and I don't think it cost me that very much money at all. Less than $20, and I've got it to where it's got a pretty good sharp blade on it, and it's been beat all to heck, and It's still my go-to knife and one that I carry every day. And if for whatever reason I lose it, it's not a big deal. I've only lost $20, and I go out there and buy myself a new one. I've seen people carry some very expensive knives out there in the field. That's all fine and dandy if that's your jam. But for me, I always try to think. I always look at my equipment as, if I lost it, would I care? So that's one of those things where if I lost a $20 knife, I think I would be okay. I will be a little bummed out because it was such a good knife, but we can move on from it. A multi-tool is something else to consider, and you can get something like a Leatherman or one of those like the Swiss Army knives where they've got multiple tools in there. That's something that, that's, I kind of group that as a nice to have type of tool. It is handy whenever you need it, but the weight that it adds, and the value that it brings as a tool. If you only use maybe one or two tools out of the whole kit, I would recommend get a dedicated tool for the couple things that you do use, because the tools on a multi tool, it's never quite what you want, and it's never quite it's usually just a well rounded something. That can serve multiple functions, but if you're only using one or two, you can probably just go ahead and dedicate to those one or two things. The one I carry is again super small. It fits in my pocket. It was not very expensive at all. If I lose it, I'm okay. It's not gonna hurt my feelings all that much. And if I have used it, quite a bit in the field, and just in very light use. So it just to do one or two things with the pliers, and then that's about it. If you're trained to use a compass and a UTM grid reader, that's something that would be considered tactical equipment, and we'll go over land navigation equipment in a later module, a GPS unit. Flashlight is a good tool to have. It's a requirement if you're going to be doing any searching at night. But a good flashlight is something that is going to cast a very strong throw, high lumen. I tend to prefer the floodlight than I do the spotlight. Spotlight's going to have a very long extended throw, but it has a very narrow focus on it. A floodlight is going to give you much brighter, wider, than it will a spotlight. So, but it's not going to cast near as far. But a good flashlight, something that's going to be impact resistant because you're bound to drop it. Something that's going to be they can adjust with the weather. I've had some flashlights, they don't do very well in the cold at all. So something that is rated for colder temperatures is good. You can drop quite a bit of money on a flashlight. Some of them are worth it. I certainly have a couple pieces that were worth the investment on those, and those are things that I would be very sad if I lost in the woods. But a good flashlight can go a long way. Headlamps are another one too. A hands-free light of some sort. I usually don't wear a headlamp. I do have one and I do take it with me. I usually don't wear it though. I'd rather prefer, keeping a light maybe on the brim of my hat, or I'll arrange my flashlight in a way where it's casting a beam out where it's not shining at someone's eyes. And that's usually my hang up on headlamps is if I turn, it's great for me. It's great for me as a hands-free tool. But for members of the team, whenever I turn and I look at them and they're getting hit in the face with the light, I'm not doing them any favors at all. So usually if I do have a headlamp, it's for something real close, that I need hands-free, dig something out of my pack, look at a map that's right here in front of me. That's usually what I use a headlamp or something like that for. Rope, paracord, tubular webbing, something that you can do some rigging with. The tubular webbing is probably a little bit more pertinent to search and rescue, so that way you can tie yourself into a litter, even if you're not trained on strapping somebody into a litter or a Stokes basket. Having a good 10 foot of tubular webbing. Actually, you only need like closer to like 6 or 7 feet, but a good 10 foot of tubular webbing, so that way you can tie into the Stokes basket to help carry out. That's something that you should have in your pack. And with the paracord, I prefer. For me, I don't do a whole lot of high or don't do a whole lot of high or low angle. Don't do a lot of climbing. I don't do a lot of rappelling. So for me, paracord usually has enough flexibility and capability for me to do what I need to do. So I keep about I don't know, probably 100 feet or so of paracord in my pack, and if I need to do something, that's a real easy something for me to do. Duct tape is another good tool, just well-rounded, versatile. It's easy to pack if you wrap it around something that you use. And then flagging tape, something like that that you can mark areas off with. I also like to use in my tactical equipment bullet here. I don't think they make the white Walmart bags anymore, but white grocery bags are very very good as well. You can tie that to a tree limb, and if it catches a little bit of wind, I mean, it looks like a big giant white balloon flying around out there. It's very noticeable if you're trying to mark something. It's a very good something to take with you. The other bags, the grays or the tans, they do okay, but the white really pops. I keep a pretty good handful of those in my pack as well. So that way, in case I need to tie something to a tree, you can actually pop a glow stick and drop it in there as well, and it really blows up at night like a giant lantern. And then finally, with survival equipment, we'll talk about survival here later on. But with survival equipment, I would say the biggest things on this is unless you are used to doing 24-hour operations or doing multi-day excursions as part of your normal search process, I would prioritize this a little bit less, but enough to at least get you going in that little one-off situation that may happen. So in terms of like fire starting, just a cheap little lighter that you keep in your pocket or you keep in your pack. That's enough to get a fire going. You can also go the route of the waterproof matches or the ferro rod that we have pictured in the. I guess it's the bottom left picture there. We have a ferro rod picture there. If you're really talented and know how to use that, that's an option as well. Water filtration is probably a little bit higher priority. Again, you should always bring enough water out there in the field with you. But if you can't or you didn't, having some kind of a water filter will be a benefit of you. So that way you can at least still consume water until you get back to a place where you can stockpile on water bottles or fill your canteens or stuff of that nature. So water filtration is another thing. An material for an emergency shelter. Again, for those of you that are used to doing multi-day excursions, you probably already carry a really nice bivy sack or a small tent with you. That's probably part of your standard turnout gear. For those of us that are used to doing 4 to 6 hour assignments, doing a couple of those in a day, having something like a small tarp or an emergency blanket is usually enough to get you going on emergency shelter. And we'll talk about the uses of an emergency shelter and the reasons why you may want to throw one together and later on in the programming here. But there's ways to have emergency shelter material handy, where it doesn't take up a lot of space in your pack, or it's not something that can be used for something else. Even something like your PVC poncho can be used as a small tarp as an emergency shelter. A trash bag can help you erect an emergency shelter. So stuff like that, we can get a little bit of creativity out of it. You have some dual functionality, so that way it doesn't take up a lot of space in your pack. But if you're used to larger operations, longer search assignments, you probably already carry something very nice, portable, lightweight. That's going to be part of the gig. A signal mirror is another option, another something that you can put in your pack. It's small, it's lightweight. It can have dual functionality. It's not only a signal mirror, but also to reflect light if you're doing any kind of tracking. So there's plenty of things we can do with the signal mirror. A whistle is a good piece of equipment as well. I recommend you carry a whistle just because it's lightweight, but even equip it in a way where it's convenient for you to access. Like I said, on my lanyard, I've got a whistle. And on my pack, on the shoulder straps, I've got a little carabiner that's got a whistle where I can just turn my head, and I've got it right there available to me. And then a strobe light is another thing you can carry with you, clip onto your pack, just some kind of a signaling device for you in case you need to get someone's attention. Big list of stuff. And like I said, if you go out there on the internet and you research what to carry in your SAR pack, you'll see some fairly extensive lists. And At one point in time, the expectation was you filled your pack with every piece of it. Times have changed over the years, and they've gone more so, dress for your day type of thing, pack for your day type approach. So I would throw this slide in here as something to really summarize my view on equipment and boil it down to what I would consider the absolute essentials. No matter what the mission is, no matter what the task is, these are the things that you always need to have with you in your pack or something you carry on your person. But these are the things you absolutely always have to have. Number one and number two here, you can flip flop these in whatever order you want, depending on how you feel about it. But water and clothing. Figuring out how to carry water is going to be the biggest challenge you have because you constantly need it. You're constantly going to consume it, and it's gonna be the thing that impacts your pack the most. How you're going to carry your water, but also your proper, having proper clothing and footwear. And I talked about this in the last module. Just the importance of having that good clothing and what it can do for you mentally. It brings a lot of confidence to you whenever you know that you've got high quality gear, and you don't have to worry about something, or at least it takes your mind off of your clothing failing you at some point or being inadequate in any way. If there's two things to invest in as a brand new SAR person, I would say clothing and footwear first, and then second is figure out how you're going to carry your water. Those are the absolute two biggest things that you need to be able to do. After that, it's your personal medications, the things that are going to keep you going while you're out there, that you have to have in order to operate safely. So your personal medications, an EpiPen, an inhaler, anything that you may need to keep you going. The fourth thing being identification, whether that's a high-vis vest that has search and rescue on the back of it, whether that's an ID badge, or like I said, a hang mount off of my lanyard, and I've put enough other cool tools on my lanyard that it forces me to grab it every time because I want to have those tools. But being able to identify that you're in search and rescue and you're on assignment is very crucial, and it's something you absolutely need to have every mission. And then lastly, a notepad and a writing tool. For me, it doesn't really matter what this is. If you want to get just a little notebook and a golf pencil, that's totally fine. If you want to get a Write in the Rain book with one of the little fancy pens that you can write on with it, that is 100% acceptable too. The objective here is you're going to be given information, you're going to be collecting information while you're out there, and having a way to write that down is absolutely crucial. So now I will switch over real quick and give you guys a little bit of a tutorial here about what I keep in my pack. And I want to do this, I want to try to do this in a way that's you guys can see, and I can kind of just flop it up here and hopefully it works out. But I'll first start with the pack itself. And this pack, this is a larger pack. This is my larger pack. I also have a smaller pack for the urban suburban environment, and it's just a simple lumbar pack. And with it, it has just the bare essentials. It's got ways for me to carry water. It's got a little medical bag with it, and it's got a little bit of tactical equipment, not a whole lot. Not like this has. This has a lot more tactical equipment in it. But the first thing I want to point out on this pack is whenever I got this pack, one of the things there were a couple things that drew me to it. The first being that I could adjust the height there or where it sits on my back. I'm a taller guy and I'm bigger framed, so I like to have things that sit lower on my back. And so this one has some tools and some adjustability to it, so that way I can get the pack height the way I like it, the way it sits comfortably on me. It weighs with water in it probably close to, I don't know, it probably weighs close to 25, 30 pounds. It doesn't weigh a ton, but it weighs enough to where if I'm walking around for a few hours, it sits comfortably on my back and it carries everything I need in it. It also has a little stabilization, little foam pieces on the side here for a little stabilization on my back as well to kind of keep everything nice and snug in it, so that way I can move around in it a lot easier. The first thing I'll point out here on the back is I have, I have a quart of water on this side, I have a quart of water on the other side, and I have plenty of room on the inside for other stuff as well. Whenever I open the pack up, the first thing you'll see here is I've got some rain gear, and I've got another fleece. I talked about that before. Inside of this orange pouch here, this is like my primary use flashlight. This has got basically my handy gear that I wish I had on every search. It sits on top. It's got flashlights. It's got a little signal mirror. It's got a tape measure. It's got just little things that I can shove in my pockets, and then I can just take the little bag and stuff it back in the pack. I've got some extra socks in there as well. I've got a knife here. Behind here, there's a small tarp, a very lightweight tarp. It's not one of those heavy, 8-10 mil tarps. This is something very small, lightweight. If it rips, it's okay. I'll just go out and get another one, but it gives me a little bit of ability to make some shelter. I've got a flashlight. This is just a search light is what this is. It's got flood and spot capabilities. And it's a heavier light, but it comes with this shoulder strap, so that way I can throw it over my shoulder. And it gives me a little bit of hands-free options there as well. And after that, the way I organize my pack is I have these little smaller bags inside that have specific functions, and they'll have specific gear in it. This is my medical one that I have my medical supplies in there, an extra little piece of bandana, my medical supplies. I've got a little SAM splint in here as well. This is my little medical pack. There's not a whole lot to it. I don't typically do a whole lot of medical work in the field, so it's got a little bit of trauma. It's got enough to keep someone stable until more help arrives. That's all I'm trying to do with my pack there. This bag here has got a little bit more stuff in it. This pack has more of the survival, the tactical gear in it. So I'll have my fire starting stuff, my water filter. I've got some paracord. Make sure that doesn't slide around. I've got some paracord. I've got some plastic bags. If I need to shove a map or I need to keep something dry, I've got that in there. I have a spoon. So when I do have some food in my pack as well, so I've got something to eat it with. I have my troll in here as well. And then at the top here, I guess I should show you here at the top, I've got some insect repellent, very small little tube. This will be enough to get me through one search. That's fine. It has enough to get me through one search, and I've got some duct tape wrapped around it, so that way I've got a little bit of duct tape. Inside of here, I have my compass. If I ever need to, I don't use the compass on every mission. I have used it on missions before for land navigation purposes. If I need it, I can easily just reach in here, get it, take it out, throw it over my neck. It's on a lanyard, and I'm ready to go. And attached to it is also my UTM grid reader. So if I need to do any navigation using a paper map, I've got that ready to go in this little compass pouch. We'll snap that back together. And then in this compartment, I have wet wipes. Again, a comfort, something that's, it may not mean a lot to everybody else, but to me, it makes a world difference whenever you have something like that out there with you. And after that, I've got some food. I've got a few bars in here, and I've also got some drink powder that will help me replenish those electrolytes while I'm out there. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that whenever we get into the section about just heat-borne illnesses and taking care of yourself, preventing dehydration. We have that out there as well. And then I think that's about the big heavy hitters on my pack. Only about half of this pack is it's a pretty good sized pack. It's about 35 liters. Whenever is the capacity on it. It's about 35 liters. And on the outside, I guess I should have shown that too. On the outside, I've also got gloves and I've got a little whistle. And again, it's a beadless whistle. You want to try to use a beadless whistle if you can. That way the little pea inside of it doesn't freeze up whenever it gets freezing outside. So I don't, in terms of gear, I don't have a tremendous amount of gear in this 35 liter pack. About half of the pack's space is devoted to is devoted to carrying extra gear. It's devoted to carrying clothing. It's devoted to if I need to bring a blanket, or if I know if I'm looking for a kid, you put a stuffed animal in there. If I need to shed gear off of me and stuff it in the pack, that's what that is. That extra space in there is really devoted to. It's not so much I don't want to fill the bag all the way up to the top, and then I've got no room for adjustments later on if I need to. It's purposely built that way so that way I've got the bare minimum to get me through. This pack will give me. I can probably do about 2 days out of this pack, easy. Probably able to stretch it to a 3 without any problem. And that's 3 days of moving, not 3 days of just sitting. If we're talking about just sitting, we can go quite a bit longer, I think, out of that pack. But it gives me enough space to carry all that, and then the flexibility to add and take away as I need. So whenever you're out there looking for pack, consider that as you're looking at options out there. There's a ton of options. This pack in particular is designed to be my longer field duration pack. Altogether, it probably weighs in the 25-pound range, so it's not super heavy. So I feel very comfortable with the gear I've got, and I know it's gonna be there to help carry me through. So I'm gonna close on that, and I want to thank you guys again for watching, and stay tuned for the next module.